Good morning, Jam Talkers. My apologies for persons who were logged in at 10 a.m. sharp to listen to the show. We had some internet issues, but we are now back on. A happy and holy Sabbath to you again, and thanks for, keeping in touch with us and being loyal supporters to this network as we continue to do, big things in many different ways and try to impact society in positive ways and also raise, major concerns that affect, people who most times don't have a voice. Many of us would speak on their behalf, and many of us also push the political agenda. But whatever we do here is always of value added. All right, I know I've been missing in action for a while. I apologize for my absence, but of course I know that my colleagues and the founder of this network were keeping you informed, entertained, and engaged in vibrant discussions as always. I have also been re-airing a few of my previous shows. Some of the more interesting ones I've asked Loyal to re-air them so persons can continue to listen who may have missed when I had broadcasted them live. Of course, I really miss my listeners, but a lot of come up on my plate and I was really stretched beyond capacity. And if you understand what we do here before we come on air live, it's a lot of work, a lot of scripting and research have to be done on our topics, and it does take some time to put together a well-researched and good quality show. And hard as I tried, I just couldn't find the time to, push forward and balance the many stuff that had come upon me. Still are upon me, but I know that it has been too long, so I have to resurface, and come and engage my listeners. So, as it relates to persons who may have topics that they want us to discuss, and you have the time, you can always send us your script, your detailed script, and of course, we'll do our editing and have it discussed for you. So that's a medium where you can help us to be on air amidst our busy schedule every week, where you can send us your script and then we will broadcast for you. My email address for persons who are interested is missandwalters@yahoo.com. That's MISSANNWALTERS@yahoo.com. missandwalters@yahoo.com. And of course, I'm Andrew Walters. That has not changed. But I'll let you know that a life after running an election is not easy for any candidate, especially those of us who didn't win. There will always be a lot of personal matter that, would have ignored to stay on the ground and to put forward a decent campaign. And it would only be harder for those of us who never had the big monies to spend and the big finances and funders coming in to give us any support. Neither did we have a lot of help with manual support in labor. So for those of us who really went out there and had to give extra personal sacrifice, getting back on your feet, it's really a challenge. And of course, things just had come up on me and I had to really hit the ground running to ensure that, life goes on for me as an individual after running an election for the Jamaica Labour Party. As I tell you, if you're left without any support, trying to keep your ship a sail without anybody, coming to give you moral support, you will feel like a fish out of water, grasping for a few seconds or minutes of air to stay alive. And not to mention, the mental basically shutdown and disconnect that many of us sometimes experience based on our individual circumstances. So that will also affect us, and kind of getting shut down from the many usual activities that we would normally be engaged in. And I'll tell you that if you're not strong, you can go in serious depression and just total shutdown, because the reality of, your bills, everything, where your personal life is, and all the sacrifice that you would have made, and then you come back to reality to go back to being, an individual with all sort of personal responsibilities. I tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy, and many of us, I can surely speak for myself. But I always tell myself that, there's nothing in my life that God didn't put me through for the storyline or the lessons learned. And sometimes many of us have to go through the roughest and the toughest and sometimes the most horrifying experiences for the storyline. And that storyline is what most of us call a testimony. And also the lessons learned from your experiences. Usually these lessons make us stronger, better, and more powerful people, almost becoming unbreakable. And I know many people will ask, why does God have to be so severe and cause people so much suffering just to teach them a lesson that should make them better? And I always say it's called tough love. The best lessons learned have to be taught in an unforgettable way or manner. You have to at times have permanent scars and memories to remind you. Less like is expected of human beings when things for us get better after we go through the rough patches. We forget who we are, where we were, where we're coming from, and what our journey was like. So these tough lessons teach us to understand the world and people better, and to put our destiny and God's plans for us into perspective. Because when you eventually make it over the finished line, many people will see your glory, I'm sure, because that is always the case. When you go through the mud and the dirt and the rough road and the horrifying life experience and the sacrifice that you would have made, and you come up, above all of that, many people just see your glory, but they'll never try to know and understand your story. And many people like me know that for you to be something, you have to do something. And for you to become something, you definitely have to go through some things. So nothing good comes easy, and you just have to use, for persons who are going through difficult times, you just have to remind yourself that nothing good comes easy. And by my faith, and I know, and I'm very confident that God would not have put some of us through the pain, hurt, fights, struggles, failures, betrayal, hardship, whatever your story is. He would not have brought you there if He wasn't preparing you for greater things. That's not the God we serve, but you have to learn the story for it to be. You have to learn the lessons and have the stories to reassure and reaffirm and validate why, when you make it over the finish line, why you deserve to be where you are. And someone once told me that gold in its raw stage is something that people can easily mistaken for something that has no value. It can be easily overlooked if you're not trained to identify or have the experience in identifying this metal for the valuable product it is. Because in its raw stage, it contains a lot of impurities and less valuable metals, such as gold and copper, which have to be removed and for it to be purified, for it to really have the value. So gold in its raw stage is something that looks like it has no value. Nobody would want to wear or buy it. It has to go through a process of purification and refinement. And after that process is completed, it becomes one of the most valuable substance that everybody wants to buy and wants to wear and wants to spend big money on. So, many of us are like that raw gold now, and we're going through the fire and the harsh process of purification and refinement, and we have to accept the hurt and pain now, and the disappointments and the failures now, because after this process is completed, we will all be better for it. So, you just have to be positive in your thoughts and in your actions, and also you have to have faith and you have to believe in something bigger than you, something that exceed and supersede who you are as a mortal being. And you just have to know that you have to stay focused and remain resolute, because this is just a journey, you're on a path, and these encounters, you have to have them. These stories, you have to have them to strengthen somebody else who you'll meet maybe after you have come out of your hump and bump, and will need some energy and some strength for them to carry through. And I know many of my atheist friends, they don't understand or even want to try to process half of what I just said. First of all, they don't believe in a God, and then they don't believe that a God who professes so much love and care for his people would really cause those he loves to go through pain and suffering. But of course, I'm not here to fight on anyone's belief. I am just here to share my story and my experiences, which by my faith and my belief in my God, has caused me to take this approach and understanding of my life and my journey. And I can only hope that someone listening can relate and will be blessed by it. And remember, my people of faith, that there's an ongoing war between good and evil. There's this allergic reaction between each other. So if you're confident in your goodness and in your righteousness and always getting a fight for it, please fight. Please continue your fight and find peace in your heart, knowing that you are hated for the right reasons and that nothing is wrong with you. It's just a fight against good by evil in its constant quest to destroy and conquer all that is good and pure. So always just find peace in your heart in knowing that though the war is constant, and that even at times it looks like evil is winning, or even at times, I will tell you, evil has won many times too, maybe more times than good. But just know that in the end, goodness and righteousness must prevail, must win, will win. You have to believe in it. You have to believe in it. Like you know that tomorrow you'll get up and the sun will come out. You have to believe in it. And just remain focused and resolute in what you are, who you are, and what belief system guides your life. Alright, so with that said, Jam Talkers, of course I miss having the time here to share my thoughts and views with you, and I know of course many of you missed me too. Many people like my out of the box thinking and the openness and frankness that I always bring to my show. And of course many of my male listeners, they listen for the voice, as some have told me that, hey, I tune in just to hear the voice. I guess the content of the conversation is bonus, but they tune in for the voice. Thank you just for tuning in. Of course, many of you are anxious to find out what my topic will be on today. So, without much ado, I will let you know that today's topic, we'll spend some time talking about this thing that has been floating around for quite a number of years now, this new world order. Is it just a conspiracy theory, or has it been our global reality for a while? what is this new world order that many documentary and research has been done, numerous. If you should type in new world order, you'll see just a numerous amount of research documents, documentary from all different levels of society. So we want to find out today, we'll delve into it a bit. What is this new world order that so many persons have been talking about for so long? Is it a religious, an economical or political movement? Or is it a process that includes all three? Is it now a reality, or is it still just a conspiracy theory? Because the world is filled with conspiracy theorists, and there's a conspiracy theory for almost everything. I will let you know. But for many years now, people have been talking about the end days or the last days, and trust me, I've been hearing about this last days and end time from I was just a tiny tot, and the many global atrocities and crises that will come upon the earth and upon the land. And many of these things will be hard to understand, and have been hard to understand and comprehend and processed with the naked human eyes and thinking, and will have to be put in a biblical and religious context to be understood. And if you read your Bible, especially the book of Revelation, you will see the many horrifying experiences that are predicted to come upon people and upon the land, the many different plagues, the many different parasites, war, famine, just atrocities after atrocities that are expected in the last days leading up to the second coming of Christ. And many people think that these predictions or prophecies, some people think they're literal, are spoken about in the Bible, but there are others who put them in context, in perspective, and put a rational face to them, put them in reality of the world that we're living in today. Some people still are expecting to see beasts roaming around with many heads and horns, and others see when they mention about these beasts that would come up in Revelation. Many people process them to be systems, whether religious system and political system or economic system, or a merger, or some cohesiveness of all those systems together working as one global superpower controlled by powerful people. I honestly don't think that we'll be seeing any beasts with horns and heads and weird stuff flying around and scaring people. So I definitely don't take them as literal as mentioned in the book of Revelation. I take them as systems, political, religious, and economic system merged together and controlled by powerful elites of the world. I often hear people saying particular presidents or popes are predicted to be the Antichrist. I hear that our present system of going moneyless is the start of the implementation of what is spoken about as the mark of the beast in the Bible, because there will come a time that if you don't possess, a card, a moneyless method of doing trade and commerce, pretty soon you will be a nobody, because you won't be able to if you are not with the material that is needed for a moneyless society. I also hear that the main purpose of our tax registration numbers and social security numbers are to allow government to track us and our activities, and basically it's a form of control and recording of data of our every movement that we make, as we pretty much can't do anything, any kind of business transaction without these IDs and these documents. You hear of the many outbreaks of viruses and diseases upon the land, and we have seen them, the SARS, the Ebola, AIDS, syphilis, name them. Now we have Chick V, Zik V, and all sorts of V's going on. And if almost every year there's a new one, and some come and go, and some linger with us for a while, like the HIV, AIDS. But today we want to look at this new world order that people have been talking about, and what it really means, what is its implications for people and countries. Is it still just a conspiracy theory, or is it now a global reality? I researched the term New World Order and found that it is often referred to as a conspiracy theory, and also is defined as the emergence of a totalitarian world government. And I was talking to a friend of mine because he wanted to know how my shows were going, and I was telling him that I haven't done any in a few weeks, but I'm trying to put together a script for my show this week. And he asked what the topic, and I was telling him that I was researching some information on the New World Order, and he was like, why you don't research stuff that young people want to hear about, young women want to hear about, fashion, maybe religion, politics, sex, whatever. How many persons really want to hear about this kind of conspiracy theory? Most people, they kind of zone out certain things. They're not interested. They just wake up every day and they eat, they sleep, they pass waste, and tomorrow is a new day and they move on. So certain things really don't interest them. They live to die, and when they die, whatever happens, not their concern. And they found it odd that I would have interest in doing a research on the New World Order to try to understand it, what it is, and to try and put it in context in some of the global experiences that I personally have seen happen in my lifetime, and in a time when I could process them for what they were and what they are. So, going back to this topic, the New World Order. Well, this conspiracy research show surrounds secretive power elite with a globalistic agenda that is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian world government which will replace sovereign nation state. It is said that many influential historical and present figures have been purported to be a part of a cable that operates through many front organizations to orchestrate significant political and financial occurrences, as well as significant world events, a step in an ongoing plot to achieve. Sorry about that. As well as significant world events, has stepped in an ongoing plot to achieve world domination through secretive political gatherings and decision-making process. It is said that the main intention of the New World Order is to effect complete and total control over every human being, being on the planet, and dramatically reducing the world's population by 2/3 of its size. In 1992, a Dr. John Coleman published conspiracy hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300. And in his researched publication, Dr. Coleman identified the players in this New World Order and gave careful details of its agenda and intentions of this worldwide domination and control, of it being, So Dr. Coleman identified the players in the New World Order and gave detailed, information of its agenda and of its intention of worldwide domination and control. And on page 161 of his document, he basically summarized the intent and purpose of the Committee of 300 as follows. And he said, a one world government, a one unit monetary system under permanent, non-elected, hereditary oligarchist who self-select who self-elect from among their numbers in the form of a feudal system as it was in the Middle Ages. In this one world entity, population will be limited by restrictions on the number of children per family, diseases, wars, and famines, until 1 billion people who are useful to the ruling class in these areas, which will be strictly and clearly defined, remain as the total world population. So they're basically choosing who their 1 billion, who they consider useful and who will remain under this new world population. He continued, there will be no middle class. Well, in Jamaica, the middle class is totally cut out. You're either rich or poor. Only rulers, so he says there will be no middle class, only rulers and servants. All laws will be uniformed under a legal system of world courts, practicing the same unified code of laws, backed up by a one world government police force and a one world unified military to enforce laws in all former countries where no national boundaries shall exist. The system will be on the basis of a welfare state. Tell people there's nothing that is free. So be careful of those governments who, just want to provide everything on behalf of the people. Anyhow, you become dependent, you lose your control and your freedom to choose. So, yes, there are some people who must be on welfare, but I'm always wary of state that just think that, the government is supposed to provide, all or almost all the basic need of an individual. All right, what Dr. Coleman is saying, the system will be on the basis of a welfare state. Those who are obedient and subservient to the one world order government will be rewarded with the means to live. Those who are rebellious will simply be starved to death or be declared outlaws, thus a target for anyone who wishes to kill them can come in and do so. And privately owned firearms or weapons of any kind will be prohibited. And we have seen where some first world countries are basically dictating to developing countries such as ours here in Jamaica, that if you don't do certain things, if you don't follow the dictate of their country or of the UN or other international organization, whatever benefits that used to come to your country will be cut off. We are seeing that right now. It is basically said, those pronouncements have already been made, where if you don't legalize certain things, if you don't implement certain things, if you don't free up certain things, if we can't dictate to you and get the support from you that we need, then hey, you're on your own. And we all know that developing countries such as ours, who is pretty much pauperized and can't stand on our own, we need the support of our international community. So this is one way of the world, the one world or the new world order government will cement its support. You work with us and you live. You think that you can stand on your own. We leave you on your own and you die, pretty much. So, and we have seen how Haiti basically have been economically paralyzed for many decades and get little or no support, because it is basically, back in the days, probably seen as a rebellious state. I don't know, want to do their own thing, and basically, if you don't submit yourself to the demands of other first world countries, nobody wants to come in and give you any support. The first world country have to be the people dictating to you how you run your country. Our local prime ministers are just basically figureheads and most times powerless, because they're just there to push the agenda of these first world countries and global organizations, and that's our reality. Dr. Coleman continued. He stated that the New World Order global conspirators manifest their agenda through the skillful manipulation of humans' emotions, especially through fear. In the past century, they have repeatedly unitized a contrivance that New World Order researcher and author David Icke has characterized in his latest book, The Biggest Secret, as problem, reaction, and solution. So what Dr. Coleman is saying now, that the instigator or the conspirator of, or conspirators of this New World Order, they push their agenda through manipulating human emotions, and they do it by driving fear. And we can see what happened with 9/11 and subsequent to 9/11, where you see all of these changes as it relates to international travel and anti-terrorist war legislation, and the different agenda that is being pushed, because they're giving they basically giving the idea that they have to push these agenda because they want to keep the world safe from terrorists. So we can see how the problem was created and how they react to it and how they try to find solution, because it is often said that governments create problem, but some people in general, they create problem so they can react, so you can react. So they create the problem, the people react, and then they come in to provide a solution. So the technique is that New World Order strategists would create the problem by funding, assembling, and training an opposition group to stimulate turmoil in an established political power, which is usually a sovereign country or region or a continent, that they wish to impinge upon, and thus create opposing fractions in a conflict that the New World Order themselves maneuvered into existence. And I've heard that before I started doing this research, that even the occurrence of 9/11, that Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, was an ally of America, and a very prominent and well-respected business person in America. and wasn't just any ordinary, Osama bin Laden, I think, right? And wasn't just any ordinary terrorist, but he was a well-respected ally of America, and that the events of 9/11 was staged. I don't know how true that is, because I'm still trying to process why a country would sacrifice so many of its people just to push an agenda. So I will let you know that I'm still having issues with those conspiracy theorists who have been pushing that agenda, that the events of 9/11, that America was very instrumental in the demise of its own people, to push an agenda, to find a reason to go and fight and basically search for weapons of mass destruction that to date have not been found. But I don't know, maybe there are other persons who know things that I don't know and have done research that I have not done, and have been talking to people who I will never get to talk to. So who am I to say one or the other? I just have to try and be balanced in all of these arguments. Right, in recent decades, so-called opposition groups are usually identified in the media as freedom fighters or liberators, which is true. At the same time, the leader of these established political powers, where the conflict is being orchestrated, is demonized and on cue referred to as another Hitler. And you can basically take your pick, he says, from Saddam Hussein to Milosevic and Gaddafi. And in the spirit of true Machiavellian deceit, the same New World Order strategists are equally involved in covertly arming and advising the leader of the established power as well. And of note, it is said that the New World Order pushes or strategists always profits from any armed conflict by lending money and arming and supplying all parties involved in the war. So there's no agenda, there's no event, there's no occurrence that was held that the strategists or the pushers of the New World Order have not benefited financially, because they are the ones either lending the money or providing the weapons, which of course the weapons are not provided for free. There's some serious things coming out here. The conflict is drawn to the world stage by the controlled media outlets, Dr. Coleman wrote, with a barrage of photographs and videotapes, reports of horrific and bloody atrocities suffered by innocent civilians. And of course, this will affect the emotions of anybody who sees these kind of atrocities against innocent people, especially young women and children. And of course, the cry goes up, something has to be done, and that is the desired reaction that is needed. So now the New World Order puppeteers then provide a solution by sending in the UN peacekeepers. They did this with Bosnia. Or the UN coalition force. They did this with the Gulf War. Or NATO bombers. And the ground troops. They did this with Kosovo. Or the military to search for weapons of mass destruction, which of course have never been found. And once they're installed, Dr. Coleman said, these peacekeepers, once they go into these countries, that they themselves instigated these wars and funded these wars from behind the scenes. When they send their troops in, these troops never leave. And the idea behind that is to have the New World Order controlled group troops in all major countries or strategic areas where significant resistance to the New World Order takeover is likely to be encountered. And we have seen where this is true. Many of the troops who have gone into Iraq, who have gone into other countries today, some are still there. So this doesn't sound so much like any conspiracy to me, because that is a reality and can be proven. He said that the corporate portion of the New World Order is dominated by international bankers, oil morons and morons is right. International bankers, oil barons, and pharmaceutical cartels, as well as major multinational corporations. And he said that the royal family of England and the House of Windsor, who he said are in fact descendants of the German arm of European royalty, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family, I hope I pronounced that correct, who changed the name to Windsor in 1914. But so they're hereditaries of German descent. He said these people are high-level players in the oligarchy, which controls the upper strata of the New World Order. The decision-making nerve centers, he says, of this New World Order are in London, Basel, Switzerland, and Brussels, where NATO has its headquarters. It says the United Nations, along with all the agencies working under an umbrella, let me repeat, the United Nations, along with all agencies working under an umbrella such as the World Health Organizations, are full-time players in this scheme. Similarly, UN, NATO, and he says that NATO is basically the military arm or tool of the New World Order. And he says the leaders of all major industrial countries like the United States, England, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, etc., all the members of the G7 and G8 are active and fully cooperative participants in this conspiracy. In this century, the degree of control exerted by the New World Order has advanced to the point that only certain hand-picked individuals who are groomed and selected or even eligible to become prime ministers or presidents of countries like England, Germany, and the United States. And I've been saying it for years that no president of the United States were ever elected. They're all selected and they're all traced back to the same bloodline. The same bloodline, and none have ever been elected. They're handpicked, they're groomed, and they're selected. But of course, it has to go through a process that give it a face or some semblance of an elected president or prime minister. So most of the major wars, political upheavals, and economic depression or recessions of the past 100 years and earlier were carefully planned and instigated by the machinations of these global elites. And they include the Spanish-American War of 1898, World War I and II, the Great Depression, the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, the rise of Nazi Germany, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the 1989-1991 fall of the Soviet communism, the 1991 Gulf War, and the war in Kosovo, and the two wars in Iraq. And trust me, these are not just theories anymore. These have been documented in history and have been real experiences. Christians have always maintained that this all-powerful system, whatever form it will take, will be the Antichrist or will facilitate the Antichrist that will emerge to mimic righteousness and goodness, like the Savior of the world. And of course, this Antichrist is expected to come in the end time, prior to the second coming of Christ. It is said that conspiracy theorists idea of the New World Order had not been embraced by many seekers of stigmatized knowledge, but has seeped into popular culture, thereby inaugurating a period during the late 20th and early 20th centuries in the United States where people were actively preparing for an apocalyptic millenarian scenario. It is said that the term New World Order came about really in the 20th century, where many politicians, to include Winston Churchill, used the term to refer to a new period of history characterized by a dramatic change or world change in politics and the balancing of global power after World War I and World Wars I and II. They saw that period, this research document says, as an opportunity to implement idealistic proposals for global governance in the sense of new collective of efforts to address worldwide problems that surpass the capacity of individual nation states to solve, which always respecting the rights of nations to self-determination. And we can see this happening where, America, after even the war in Iraq, where the new call for support to fight against terrorism, and even now with the emergence of ISIS, where America has been trying to build, allies globally and basically build up support globally to fight what is now a common concern for every country, the act of terrorism. So everything is really playing out, and these have been documented. They're not just something that people sit and wonder about anymore and try to come up with different type of theories on. These are actual reality and conversation and dialogue taking place and have taken place. And of course, as the research says, they still respect the rights of nations to self-determination. So you can determine whether you want to be a part, of the New World Order. But if you are not, then you're left to die. So, because you're on your own and you'll be getting no support from these really strong superpower elite group that control the world, and it's a very small percent of people that has global power right across. So it says the research document says these proposals led to the creation of international organizations such as the United Nations and NATO, and international regimes such as Bretton Woods systems and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which were implemented to both maintain a balance of power in favor of the United States and to regularize cooperation between nations in order to achieve a peaceful phase of capitalism. Many welcome these new international organizations and regimes in the aftermath of World War II, but argued that they suffered from a democratic deficit, were therefore inadequate not only to prevent another global war, but to foster global justice thus activities around the globe formed a new world federalist movement, hoping to create a real new world order. So I guess when this talk about new world order came about, it was more of a theory than a reality. But as governments evolve, as economies evolved, as global markets evolved and grew and mature, and as countries that were underdog or barely owning their own in the global marketplace, then you basically see the actuality of what many of the theorists on this matter were have written about, spoken about, put in documentary, made films about, movies about. We really seeing the reality of this new world order coming to the fore. And in the research that I did mention that there is a period known as the Red Scare of 1947-1957, where conspiracy theorist William Guy Carr increasingly embraced and support unfounded fears of Freemasons, Illuminatis, and Jews being the driving force behind an international communist conspiracy, what he referred to as a threat of godless communism in the form of a state atheistic and bureaucratic collectivist world government. The Red Scare came to shape one of the core ideas. William Guy Carr said that the Red Scare came to shape one of the core ideas of the political right in the United States, which is that liberals and progressives, with their welfare state policies and international cooperation programs such as foreign aids, supposedly contribute to a gradual process of collectivism that will inevitably lead to a nation being replaced with a communist one world government. And I tell you, when these governments send international countries and international bodies send foreign aids into countries such as Jamaica and other developing countries that cannot stand on their own, we basically have to live by the dictates of these countries. So it's a warning to developing countries such as ours. If we don't want to expose our citizenry to the dictate of other countries, and if we want to maintain whatever sovereignty that we think we have now, we better find ways and means of growing our country. We have to find ways and means of being able to produce to feed our nation, to protect our nation, to keep our nation educated and healthy and safe. We have to be able to be satisfied with what we have and don't have a craving for what we cannot afford. We have to change our mindset, because if we don't, and if we continue to have this international appetite and this materialistic approach to how we live our lives, we'll get caught in things. And as a Christian country, well, I always say we have the most churches per square mile in the region. It will affect us badly, because many of us, we will remain resolute in what we believe in, and will not bend backwards to the dictate of anybody, especially what the demands are. And if we don't, many of us, if we don't try to be self-sufficient, that's the word, self-sufficient. If we don't push our people in all walks of life, in all areas. And if we don't grow our country to a stage where we're self-sufficient and can satisfy our needs adequately, we can feed ourselves, we can keep our people safe, we can keep our people healthy, we can educate our nation, we can stand on our own, we are really going to just be slaves of these international organizations and first world country who will be pushing their individual agenda and just using us as pawns in the system. During his speech towards a New World Order delivered on September 11, 1990, during a joint session of the U.S. Congress, President George H.W. Bush described his objectives for post-Cold War global governance in cooperation with post-Soviet states. And I quoted what he said in that speech. He said, "Until now, the world we have known has been a world divided, a world of barbed wires and concrete blocks. Now we can see a new world order coming into view, a world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, a world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founder. A world in which freedom and respect for human rights find a home amongst all nations." And we just mentioned where these strategists of the New World Order agenda, the strategy of their work is that they create a problem that plays upon the emotions of people, and then the people will react. When you see innocent people die, when people are in a country that they think that they are being oppressed by the leader of that country, and they need somebody to come and fight for them and free them and defend them. So based on the reaction now, they can come in and provide their solution and set up base in this country. So on the premise of doing good, what the end result for them is really not so good, but a personal agenda of a totalitarian kind of global control, and where the world will be in the hands of just a few very powerful elites who most of course control the wealth of the world. And in another speech by President George H.W. Bush, this one he made January 29, 1991, I quote, "What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in a common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind, peace and security and freedom and the rule of law. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order." And many people will say by this speech that there's no wonder that the bombing of the war in Iraq, that last war, happened under President Bush's watch or presidency. And I've heard many people, say that that family is really the warmonger, and they always instigate war and have some agenda to push war, not much so for any noble cause, not for any humanitarian reasons, but always for economic and financial gains. So many people will not be surprised of the many utterances and support of President George H.W. Bush on pushing forward an agenda for a new world order where control comes under one umbrella with people who are like-minded and have the same intentions. The New York Times wrote that it observed that the progressives were denouncing this New World Order as a rationalization of American imperial ambitions in the Middle East, while conservatives rejected any new security arrangements altogether and fulminated about any possibility of a UN revival. So basically the conservatives were rejecting any new security arrangement pushed forward on the premise that America needed to go into the Middle East because there are reports or proof of weapons of mass destruction being hoarded in that region and in Iraq where they went specifically. The New York Times continue and said that, however, Chip Burlett, an American investigative reporter specializing in the study of right-wing movements in the U.S., wrote that when President Bush announced his new foreign policy would help build a new world order, his phrasing surged through the Christian and secular hard right like an electronic shock, since the phrase had been used to represent the dreaded collectivist one world order government for decades. Some Christians say Bush was signaling the end times betrayal of a world leader, and secular anti-communists saw a bold attempt to smash U.S. sovereignty and impose a tyrannical collectivist system run by the United Nations. So Christians really were not in agreement and saw it as just a move to push the dreaded agenda of these powerful global elitists. And of course, the selected president then, George Bush, was just being used to push forward that agenda. We have American televangelist Pat Robertson. A lot of us know him, with his 1991 best-selling book, The New World Order, became the most prominent Christian popularizer of the conspiracy theories around recent American history. And he put forward a scenario where Wall Street, the Federal Reserve System, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission controls the flows of events from behind the scenes, nudging the people constantly and covertly in the direction of a world government for the arrival of the Antichrist. And we have seen these global events playing out right before our eyes. So many of us who read Revelation and were confused because many of us were taking what was written or what is written in Revelation literally. We have seen how these prophecies and how these writings have manifested themselves in global events that played out right before our eyes and that are playing out right before our eyes as we speak at this very, very minute. We're putting the revelation has been played out right before our eyes in these global events, these conversations that are taking place, these policies that are being pushed forward, these agendas that are being pushed forward, these allies that are being built, this cohesiveness of these global superpowers. We see everything being played out in our eyes, and we're looking for beasts roaming around. Those beasts are these powerful countries, powerful international bodies, and very tight, powerful systems that are in place and that are really making the decision for the world right now. You think you live in Jamaica and we're a sovereign nation. We are not. We have to basically abide by the dictates of these international bodies and first world countries. We are basically held hostage by these international bodies who control the world. So we ain't very independent or sovereign at all. We're just on the face. Everything is just on the surface. We are back with the IMF, and people, we talk about the IMF loan as if it's free money, and it's monies that we don't have to pay back as a country. And we boast about who is passing the test and who not passing test, and who doing this and who doing that as it relates to the IMF. And we boast about going to the IMF to borrow money from this International Monetary Fund as if it's free money, as if the IMF just gave us millions of US dollars just like that, and we don't have to pay it back, and they have no control in what we do as a sovereign nation, in what our prime ministers and governments do, irrespective of which one is there, as long as we're under an IMF regime. And we don't see how the conspiracy theory of the one world order being played out every step of the way through these international organizations, and how they seek to set up themselves in your country. I remember researching the IMF, and many of the countries that IMF have gone into and left, most times those countries after the IMF have come out, they are left more pauperized than before the IMF went in. And in a couple of years again, they have to go right back to the IMF. They were nowhere better for the IMF having come in. We have to start looking beyond the surface and be deeper. We have to stop, even females and young males, we have to get deeper in our thought process. We have to be more investigative, be more analytic in how we process information, and digging deeper than what is said to us on the surface and what is being played out on the surface, because nothing really happens on the surface. The real deal, sometimes you have to chip away at a big, strong brick wall before you can really find what the truth about a particular situation or issue is. So we need to start, get those laser eyes in, and don't be too vulnerable. A lot of us are very vulnerable people, and we're like very robotic in our mannerism. We are easily led. We are pushed here and if they who is pushing us change their route on us, even if we at that stage thought we're on the right path, we are then we have to detour and retract and go back and go around there. And a lot of us don't have minds of our own, so we don't know how to process or take the time out to process or even go and have dialogue. I love to debate. I love to just throw something out there and have other persons participate, and you learn through conversation. You learn from not just being robotic in your approach to life, but having a voice. Say, even if you don't think what you're saying is the truth, but you'll never know the truth unless you put it out there, because history is always stored. Somebody has been there and transferring that knowledge and transferring that information from when it first happened to now. We're all transferers of historical data and information, but you have to have these kind of conversation. It's not just about Vybz Kartel and clothes and the Kardashian and which makeup in and lipstick and fingernails and false hair, and it has to be conversations of substance where you can actually learn important world information that's affecting us today, information that will affect us tomorrow, information that will affect us generations to come. We need to get more. I'm imploring our young people to find time to get more involved in those kind of conversations. Hollywood conspiracy, thriller, television shows and films have also played a role in introducing a vast popular audience to various fringe theories relating to the New World Order conspiracies, which for decades were previously confined to radical right-wing subcultures. And of course, in 1993 to 2002 television series, The X-Files, I used to love watching The X-Files. I still do. The 1997 film Conspiracy Theory and the 1998 film The X-Files, because there was a series and then there were actually a movie. The X-Files Fight the Future are often cited as notable examples of basically how the conspirators of this new world order and these secret societies, and how they spread their viruses and how they instigated war, and how, you know, all of these atrocities play out, and all the conspiracy surrounding all these events. You know, those movies, especially the X-Files, were very interesting series, and the movie itself, as I saw the movie also. I can't recall if I've seen the film Conspiracy Theory, though I definitely will be getting it to watch. We have also seen in the music and film industry constant talks of the impact and control of this Illuminati movement on the actors and artists. And the theory behind this is that these people in the industry, in the music and film industry, will have to trade their souls for their successes. And ironically, when you put in this topic for the New World Order, you always see some mention of its ties to the Illuminati movement. And of course, from a Christian perspective, we all know that the Illuminati movement is really one that is said to be more on the demonic and devil worshipping side. I've really not sat to speak to a member of an Illuminati movement, so I don't know how true this statement is, or the perception or assumption that really it is a demonic movement. Following the start of the 21st century, and specifically during the late 2000 financial crisis, many politicians and pundits such as Gordon Brown and Henry Kissinger used the term the New World Order in their advocacy for a comprehensive reform of the global financial systems and their calls for a new Bretton Woods that will take into account emerging markets such as China and India. So China is really making a big impact on the global market, and of course the strategists or the initiators of the New World Order would want a China to be an ally and be, a good participant in that regime. And of course India is also coming to own its own. So many are of the opinion that a new world order is being formed on earth as we speak at this very second. And of course the Bible prophesied that the Antichrist will reign over the world for 3.5 years prior to the second coming of Christ. And Revelation 13 verse 7 states that power will be given to the Antichrist over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And Daniel 7 verse 23 tells of a world governmental system ruled by the Antichrist, whoever this Antichrist will be and wherever he'll be coming from. And the fourth beast shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it to pieces. So we all know that the beast is really a political, I would say it's a merger, how I understood it, a merge of a political, a religious and an economic system that will basically be empowered to rule the world and have global autonomy and totalitarian agenda and control, control and agenda over the whole world. And it is said here that after World War II, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is NATO, was formed as an edge against the advance of communistic Warsaw powers led by the USSR. It says when Mikhail Gorbachev became leader of the Soviet Union, he allowed the fall of the Berlin Wall and ultimately of the Iron Curtain. World leaders declared that the Cold War was over, and they proclaimed the birth of a new world order. And when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990, President George H.W. Bush, and his name is always coming forward with the New World Order. It says when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990, President George H.W. Bush put together a UN coalition of 29 nations to fight against Saddam. It was at that time that Bush Sr. made his famous statement that we really do have a chance at the birth of a new world order. And I mentioned before that the Bush presidents, Senior, Junior, all of them, they are known to be chief instigator of war and always have some, agenda for global control. It says after the Berlin Wall fell, and this that I'm reading now is showing how the advent of globalization really ties in the movement of the New World Order and how it supports supports the agenda of the New World Order, or globalization supports the agenda of New World Order. It says after the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, we began hearing new terms like world community and international community. And David Rockefeller said that a global crisis would have to occur before the world would be willing to accept a new world order, which is true. America always build up its allies after a global crisis, because the reaction will gain America's sympathy from other countries to support its cause. So that is a reality. It's no longer just a theory. When the world's economy began a dramatic downward plunge in 2008, world leaders began proclaiming the need for a new world order with global economic structures. The word globalization means what it is. It is a process of transitioning the world into a global government and a global marketplace. The Commission of Global Governance, created by the United Nations, released a report titled Our Global Neighborhood, which affirms a global court, a global tax, a global police force. And the United States publication 7277 sets forth a one world police force under the United Nations. When we hear about international law, it is referring to the laws of the international government. When we hear about world court, it is referring to the court system that has been created to enforce the laws of the world government system. The World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the International Monetary Fund, all of these powerful world institutions are exactly what they are. They are all components of the one world government. The world government prophesied for the end time over 2,000 years ago. And I just feel like I want to read that again. I'm really pushed to repeat that. When we hear about the world court, it is referring to the court system that has been created to enforce the laws of the world government system. The World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the IMF, all of these powerful world institutions are exactly what they are. They are all components of the one world government. The world government prophesied for the end time over 2,000 years ago. It went on to say financial markets turmoil, Middle East tension, terrorism, global war and terror, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, cyber attacks, debt bubbles, inflation, deflation, climate change, rising technology and machinery and artificial intelligence, globalization, geopolitics, currency wars, geoengineering, police state, global economic meltdown, oil and commodity collapse. There are countless major dilemmas facing the world right now. These, however, these, however, were not originated on their own. They have been in large created intentionally. And there is a quote by Sir John Dalberg Acton of 1887. And the quote says, "Remember, where you have a concentration of power in a few hands, all too frequently, men with the mentality of gangsters gain control. And history has proven that powers tend to corrupt." Sorry, let me read that again. This is a quote by a British historian, Sir John Dalberg Acton, And he says, and he made this quote 1887, says, remember, where you have a concentration of power in a few hands, all too frequently, men with the mentality of gangsters gain control. History has proven that power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this is a quote by a famous banker, Paul Warburg. He made this February 17th, 1957, as he testified before the U.S. Senate the U.S. Senate. Paul Warburg stated, and I will read the statement that he made. It was an absolute statement, actually. He said, we will have a world government whether you like it or not. The only question is whether that government will be achieved by conquest or by consent. And I'm pushed to read this again. It's a statement made by Paul Warburg on February 17, 1950, where he was testifying before the U.S. Senate. And he said, we will have a world government whether you like it or not. The only question is whether that government will be achieved by conquest or by consent. Gentle people, as we reflect on all the global events and occurrences, all the pronouncements, all the activities, all the dialogues, all the policies that have been pushing the agenda, the utterances at all spheres, I personally have come to a conclusion that this New World Order or one world government, it's not just a theory anymore, and it's not just people throwing conspiracy around. It's not just idle chatter floating around in thin air anymore. It has been a reality. It has been a strong, documented reality. Historical events have been documented to support that all of those occurrences were strategic and geared towards gaining support and cooperation in maintaining a one world government, or pushing forward to putting into full force a one world government, and to push the agenda of the strategists and supporters of the New World Order. And we go back to who really are the driving force behind this New World Order, and we'll see that these are the people who have controlled the world. And it's the same bloodline, it's the same set of organization. They have one agenda, their intentions, they have one commonality, they have one common cause, their intentions are the same. The end result is the same for all of these people who are part of that powerful global elite, that set of people who has controlled the world for centuries, and the bloodline continues and the system continues. So let us not fool ourselves. And even more so, I will mention for my atheist friends who just think that, I think some of them just think that it was of some drunkard and some madmen who got up one day and document the Bible. I will accept that there are errors in the Bible, because the information, it has been written, and the transfer of information, there will be some kind of inconsistency and some errors. As human beings wrote the book, and only one person came on earth and took on the form of being a mortal being that went through that process and never erred and never sinned. Every single other of those great men who walked with him, talked with him, were his disciples, were his main supporters, really great men, godly men, at one point or another fell from grace because they were mortal beings created in sin and shaped in iniquity. So I can appreciate that the Bible will document events that may have some inconsistency or even errors. But we have seen in Revelation what was prophesied, and we have seen what has been played out before our eyes, or what has been documented in history by these world events. And if we really take an investigative approach, a very analytical approach, a really, really, how do I put it? Deep, not just on the surface, look and just read it and just, you're just reading a book like you're reading a romance novel, but really process the information for what it is, for what you read, for what they are. You'll see that the New World Order is not just a conspiracy theory anymore. It has been our global reality for a number of years now, and it continues to strengthen its form and to strengthen its cause, because it still has not reached the place. It still has not accomplished its total objective of forming that one world government. It's a process, and it's going through the different stages and phases of the process to get to the end result, to the main and core objective. And as I said, for people like us here in Jamaica, where we'll get to a stage where another country or an international body will be able to dictate to us what you do, what your people do. And then if our survival as a country and as a people will be dependent on that, then we better pull up our socks now to be self-sufficient and to grow our economy and to be able to stand on our own. So when these demands come upon us that conflict with who we are as a people, as a Christian society, what our culture is, what characterizes us as a people, what makes us who we are as a sovereign nation, we can stand up and say, hey, we're rejecting that. We don't want to be a part of that. We're not supporting you with that or on that agenda. And then life can go on for us still, where we can feed ourselves, we can keep ourselves safe, we can educate our children and our nation, and we can keep our nation healthy and continue to grow our economy. So, my good people, thank you for listening. I hope there was something that was said in the show today that was of value added to you, and that you'll, take a deeper look at some of the things that has happened globally and even within our own country. And it's a online program, so persons outside of Jamaica will be listening, and then you can really put everything into context and try to understand what exactly my show was about today, and see why I've come to the conclusion that this agenda that is being pushed forward for one world government is a reality, and the pieces are being put together. The pieces in that process is really playing out right before our eyes in the many different global events, and one day it will become a reality. Enjoy your Sabbath, and I'll see you next week, Saturday. Same place, same time. Thanks for being here. It's still Andrea Walters. And of course, the show is Real Talk. And of course, we always keep it real. God bless. Bye-bye.